I went from unblocking people's showers on a Monday. Within 6 weeks, I'm on the cover of TV Week thinking, what the is going on here? The transformation was instant.
Craig McLachlan.
A true icon of Australian TV and music.
In the 80s and 90s, he wasn't just a star, he was a phenomenon.
From Neighbours to Home and Away, gold logies and chart-topping hits. Now, after the fight of his life, he's back to reclaim his legacy.
Imagine being asked in court, have you ever said, or did you ever say to anyone, Mr. McLachlan would routinely pull down a female colleague's pants and kiss her on the Have you ever said that to anyone? Click on the device and what do you hear? I didn't know I was being recorded. It was horrendous. It was horrible. You've always got to look for the positives in anything and everything, and things are looking positive. Nessie and I are really excited about some of these projects coming up for 2025. You'll be the first guys we come to.
Let's go, yes.
Welcome to the Little Fish Podcast, powered by ReadyBuild, bringing you the best price and value in knockdown rebuild and dual occupancy projects. If you're planning a single or a dual home build, book a call with me. Just scan the QR code on your screen or visit littlefishproperty.com/call to get started. And for all the property nerds out there, head to littlefishnetwork.com/free to unlock exclusive insights, property tools, and the best online property community in the game, completely free. Let's get into the pod. Welcome back to Australia's #1 podcast. We are the Little Fish. We speak to the big fish about town each and every week. Please like, share, subscribe. Appreciate all the support. Rip a guest today, Benny.
Oh, mate, this is huge.
You're sitting there fanboying.
I am. I don't know. It's embarrassing, but it's true.
Shows your age. But no, it's super exciting, Craig. Thanks for dropping in today.
Fellas, listen, I can't thank you enough. This is such a thrill for me. I've never done this before. I mean, I've done a couple of podcasts, but never in situ in a studio with a crew and a fantastic cinematographer over here by the name of Ace. No, I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks so much for having me. Speaking of big fish, you got a marlin right here.
Orca.
The orca.
The orca.
Yeah.
Craig, and great point. First podcast. This is a first for us and a first for you.
And I would argue a national fucking treasure, dude. For real. And I don't say that lightly, Craig, for context. You know, like, well, I'm sure we're going to get into it.
We are.
But there was some crazy times back in the day.
Mate, the 80s.
Absolute wild times.
The 80s. And look, there's no better place to start than, to just really get the intro of this chat into context. I went from unblocking people's showers on a Monday and playing in pub bands of an evening, usually smelling of Selsun Blue, which was a shampoo that was popular back in the day. So my skin was smelling of old shampoo because I've been blocking showers. I'd go and play 4 or 5 sets at an RSL club or whatever that evening. Within 6 weeks, I'm on the cover of TV Week thinking, what the is going on here? I mean, it was literally, the transformation was instant, and we all know, of course, what the show was. And I'm not going to sing the theme tune, but I literally could have been at your local KFC sorting out their grease trap only weeks before knocking on the Mitchell house, as it was then, where Madge Ramsey lived, the door opening and Henry going, "G'day, Mum." Yeah. Which was how it all started.
Yeah.
So how does this talk us through that? Like, you went through very quickly there, but love the transition. But how does it start? Like, you're rocking up to auditions, or you're getting under people's noses. Like, where does the opportunity arise?
That's a really good question. And for me, and I was talking to our young cinematographer Ace about it. For me, as a kid, it was all about rock and roll and playing guitar. That was really it for me as a kid. Hours and hours in my bedroom. I could have been surfing, playing footy, doing whatever. I was dropping the needle on my brother's classic vinyl.
12-inch.
Yeah. Dropping the needle on the vinyl and just rocking out to stuff. A close second to the guitar was going to the local cinema and watching the movies And then, of course, there's the family black and white television. The kids won't know what a black and white television was. Do they even know what a television is anymore? I don't know. But, and of course, growing up in the 60s and 70s in Australia, it was all the British comedies and the American stuff, the Gilligan's Islands, the Lost in Spaces and what have you. And I always used to think, well, if I don't cut it as a guitar player, you know, I might have a crack at acting. In the mid-'80s, as I mentioned earlier, very quickly, I was playing in various pub and club bands. And you could be, this is not an originals band. This is you're performing, you're playing for guest vocalists. You know, one night I could be standing behind Lucky Grills. There's a name for some of our older. And I'm playing Tie a Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree. And I'm thinking, this really doesn't rock, but it's all experience, isn't it? I did a couple of television commercials only because I bumped into someone who was a friend of an agent and said, "You're not a bad looking kid. You could probably do the odd TV commercial." I said, "Oh yeah, does it pay better than cleaning out the dunnies at KFC?" And they went, "I think you'll find it does." And so, I did a few television commercials. My first commercial, I actually starred as a small pineapple segment for a Hawaiian luau takeaway meal. I'm not going to tell you what the company was.
Oh, we'll find it.
It wasn't the Golden Arches, I can tell you that. But so yeah, my television debut was playing a pineapple segment, and then I was back to tying a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree at night. Absolutely out of the blue, an agent I'd become involved with. She was a wonderful lady by the name of Leela King. She rings up out of the blue, and by this point, I'd picked up a couple of death shifts at a bar in Sydney that was called the Marble Bar. Sydney-siders might remember it in the 80s. What went on in the Marble Bar stays in the Marble Bar. But anyway, I used to do a double shift on a Friday night, which was basically all night back in the day. I was just about to walk out the door. I'd turned down another yellow ribbon around the old oak tree gig that night to do this double shift at the bar because the money was a bit better. The agent rings and says, "Hey, listen, exciting news. You know that scene you did for Sons and Daughters?" Literally, I was in for one day, did a scene and buggered off. Another very popular Australian soap. The director happened to work for Grundy's Television, and they were looking for to cast this new character in Neighbours. Two very popular characters were leaving Neighbours. Dr. Clive and Peter O'Brien's character, who was a Ramsey, Shane Ramsey. There you go, testing my memory. My agent rings up and explains, there's two characters leaving Neighbours. That director you worked with recently, he put in a good word for you. Grundy's want to audition you. I go, okay. Not now, I hope, because I've got a double shift at the Marble Bar and I don't want to miss that. She goes, no. First thing next week. I said, oh, okay. Is it for Sons and Daughters, a permanent thing? She goes, no. It's for a show called Neighbours. You know Neighbours, right? And I went, no. She went, oh, that's really funny. No, you know Neighbours.
Was it every night at that point? So it was,
every
6:30.
I'd never.
You're playing your guitar in the bedroom.
I'd never.
Too busy working.
Yeah, too busy working at the Marble Bar, or getting the call for KFC. I'd never seen it. She goes, how could you not see it? It's everywhere. And I said, I haven't seen it. She said, have you heard about the young Minogue kid and whatever? And I'm
Charlene.
like, I said, no, I haven't. But I won't let them know that when I go to the audition. I'll watch it over the weekend. She said, it's not on the weekend. I said, well, I'll have a look at it first thing Monday. Anyway, she said, well, your audition's Monday. You won't get to see it. I go to the audition. And because two very popular characters are being replaced, the dressing room of this joint.
Was it the Waverley Studios?
No, this was way back when Reg Grundy, God rest his soul, Reg Grundy had Grundy House in Artarmon here on the north side of Sydney. And they used to hold all their auditions, and that was kind of their business HQ. I walk into the waiting room, the sitting room, and every face you recognise. Oh, gee, he was in The Restless Years. He was in Sons and Daughters. I've seen him in Matlock Police. He's a bit old for this, isn't he? But anyway, he's here. So everyone I'm looking... Lucky Grills wasn't there, but that's because he was waiting for me at an RSL club to sing Yellow River around the old ribbon around the old actory. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Because I don't have any real experience. I didn't go to NIDA, Whopper, Cracker, Whipper, Zipper, or any of those other places. My education had been just as a guitar player for people and playing a pineapple segment, which is not going to really help you for an audition. Yeah. Anyway, they call me in. I go in, and there's two fellas there who I became great friends with. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I recognised immediately that these were two very easygoing. They made everyone feel comfortable on the day, but they were two gay guys. So I stripped down to a singlet and just told as many funny stories as I could and cracked gags with them and basically made them fall in love with me, because I knew once the camera came on, I had no camera technique. I could memorise lines, but, you know. Anyway, we just had a riotous time and just telling stories and laughing and all the rest of it. And I left and I thought, well, I probably won't get it because I don't have the experience, but at least those two fellas, the next thing they do, they might go, do you remember that funny kid?
So what are you, 16, 17?
No, I was 20. I was 20 at this point. I did, however, I'll take a little step to the left or a jump to the right or a step to the whatever. When I was 16, here we go, we'll go back a little bit further. Did you get that, Ace? My dad died when I was 14 going on 15, and the family kind of imploded, as you can imagine. I dropped out of school early, and I'm not suggesting that any of the kids do that. I jumped on a train. There was no M1 motorway between the Central Coast and the Hunter Valley and Sydney back then. It was a windy old. I'm just thinking about the trips down to the Royal Easter Show. It was a horrendous trip. I'm not making you feel crook, am I, Ace? That's my car sick acting, you see. You know, window down, you're trying to get cold air on your face. There's no air conditioning back in those days. Mum, you might have to pull over. At 16, I left. I dropped out of school. I jumped on a train, and I only knew George Street and Pitt Street in Sydney because that's where you'd go for Christmas shopping. I went to a phone box, went to the Yellow Pages and looked up actors and or theatrical agents, managers, whatever. Well, there happened to be one on George Street. You beauty, I'll find that, and I'll just... So I walk into this agency, and there was a fellow on reception, really nice guy. He was on the phone, and he just give me a second. And he's chatting. I'm standing there, and he goes, yes, what can I do for you, doll? And I went, I'm here to be a star. And he went, take a number and stand in queue. And I went, I didn't see the queue. I mean, I was so naive. I don't come from a showbiz family. And just to get rid of me, he sent me on a casting. So he said, do you know what a casting is? And I said, yeah, I've got an uncle down Wollongong Way, and he works in...
He's a fisherman.
Well, no, he worked in the steel industry, so casting and prefabrication.
Of course, casting.
So yeah, I can do that, you know. You want me to play a... No, Dale, a casting. Have you ever been to a casting? And no. They send me to a casting at North Sydney for the aforementioned pineapple segment job. Same thing. I walk in there. People are immaculately dressed. They're all so good looking, these youngsters. What the hell am I doing here? Anyway, I get called in. And they said, do you have a photograph? And I went, yes, I do. I get my wallet out and I go, it's not a great one of my brother, but it's a pretty good one of me and Mum. And the guy is just like, yeah, all right, just stand against the wall, take a Polaroid and go in and meet the director. The director said, I hear you don't have any photos. I said, I do, but I've learnt that one. I'm not going to show you that one again. Just get up there, mate, and pretend to be a piece of fruit dancing the hula. And I went, ha, now that I can do. By the time I get back to the agent in George Street, he's on the phone again. I don't know, Darlie, just wandered in from somewhere up north. I know, he's like Bomber the Jungle Boy. Well, I'll tell him I guess we are representing him now. All right, oh, he's here. I don't know what you did, Darl, but you got that. And so at 16, my first taste of doing anything professionally for the telly was that train trip I took to Sydney, but I just wasn't ready for it. I did a few ads. I did a couple of days on the Young Doctors and then retreated back to what I knew, which was playing the guitar. And I just had to get myself together after losing my father, really. So I was 20 when I met these guys, the producers of Neighbours, and it was shortly after my 21st birthday that I moved into the street known as Ramsey.
When all this craziness was happening in the 80s with you, Guy, Jason, Kylie, and this Neighbours run.
Yep.
Attention still existed back then, right? It's crazy. Like people, it'd be quick. It's easy to think, oh well, it wouldn't have been that big. There wasn't much going on. The reality was there was 3 TV channels, a couple of influential magazines.
Yep.
And the entire country's attention. That's where it was directed. And there was a period there where it was you 3 or 4 that were dominating. The entire country was there. Like it just went from. I think you were saying before that you went from unblocking toilets 1 week, you did your 6-week period, and then all of a sudden you are quite literally a superstar. How the hell?
Yeah. It was mental.
Like you would have had everyone in Australia vying for your attention, trying to, in your pocket, all of that kind of stuff. You're a young kid.
Yep.
Your dad wasn't around.
Yep.
How did you manage? How did you pull? How did you get through it? How did you comprehend it? Did you understand it at the time?
Oh, not really. I mean, seeing when I first started shooting on location and seeing Jason and Kylie in particular, when I say mobbed, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, to see them leave the set, the property,
the Pinot Court,
the Pinot Court. So once they left whichever house they were filming in, came through this gateway into a public area that accommodated, the crew trucks and changing vans and all the rest of it. The locals, especially if it was school holiday time, and the teens are all back from high school and stuff, they would be just. It was like you. Can you remember? Well, no, you're both too young, but there was a cartoon version of the Beatles, and the closing credits of the cartoon series of the Beatles was just the 4 Beatles running from this mass of hysterical fans, right? And it was an image that I immediately brought to mind the first time I saw in person fans just mob.
And that was in your first week, first 6 week stint.
That's in that first period, right? And I'm standing back going, "Oh, that's mental. That's like the end of the Beatles cartoon, And over the course of a couple of weeks, as it was getting closer to Henry's first episode premiering, Kylie took me aside and said, this is all going to happen to you. Strap yourself in because it's a wild ride. And even then I remember going, I'm not as pretty as you two. That shit ain't going to happen to me. But she knew. She was living it. And it's mine.
Yeah, we'd have to check it, yeah.
But I think the only television event up until Princess Diana's tragic passing and the televised funeral, the only event bigger than Scott and Charlene's wedding. Think about this.
That's madness.
The only bigger than the Olympics, bigger than whatever, was the marriage of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer, and they only pipped us by like 3 viewers or something.
And there was like a real wedding.
That's a real wedding, right? So the pretend,
like real royalty.
the pretend wedding
Yeah.
with Henry and co
Yeah.
was.
I could just remember. I can't
Yeah.
remember the full episode.
But isn't that insane?
Yeah.
There's the moon landing, and it's down here, and Scott and Charlene getting
Yeah.
married is up here.
Yeah.
But that
powerful.
goes to say how big this thing was, man. Like, it was
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was insane.
Like, I think as kids, like I just remember kids, you hear them say now they want to be YouTubers, right? When we were kids, we wanted to be on Neighbours. You know what I mean? We wanted to be like, that's what it was.
Yeah,
I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to be on Neighbours.
yeah. I mean, admittedly, I didn't because I didn't know what it was. But once I was there,
This Neighbours thing's a bit of a
know.
thing, isn't it?
and it was, it was just again that collection of people at that time.
Lightning in a bottle, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
that's the perfect example. Of lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
It'll never happen again. You can't manufacture it.
no,
Like, it's just
and look, I know the show continued on for decades. But
well, it's still alive today.
Yeah.
And that's on the back of the strength of that the
Yeah.
lore of the show.
yeah, it and when I say, I mean that particular cast. Yeah,
Des.
I love those guys.
Daphne died, didn't she? Did Daphne
died
Yeah.
again. Massive episode.
Harold died a couple of times, I think.
So I've been told. Yeah, but not only the cast, the crew at that time, you couldn't wait to get to work and just have a giggle with the crew. The directors, I mean, every now and then you got someone in there who, some directors, obviously they took the gig because they needed the gig and just didn't want to be there, and you got a real sense of that. But by and large, just a wonderful team of people on the writing, directing, producing side. The guys on the floor, the guys on location. For many years of that, if we can call it the golden period, there was a location cameraman, Joe Battaglia, who I got word when I was in London was dying of cancer. I'll tell you how much I love these people. I jumped on a plane so I could see Joe in hospital before he shuffled off. He had such a profound impact on my young life as a professional, and was just a good guy. So to have that couple of visits at the hospital with him was just, it was great for both of us. But such was the collection of people in those crazy, crazy years of the 80s.
That was mind blowing. Top of the Pops. Do you remember that?
I do.
Double denim, dude. What?
Look.
You rocked it too, man, and that was mad. But there was a bit of double denim going on, man.
Look, no one told me at the time that double denim was
a no-no.
in terms of fashion. That was akin to a turd in a punch bowl, wasn't it? Don't touch the punch. Yeah. Listen,
Check 1 2.
Check 1 2. The band, of course, was originally called the Y-Fronts when we were playing in and around Newcastle on the coast and all the rest of it. And you say to yourself, really, Craig? Like, what's worse, Check 1 2 or the Y-Fronts? But you got to understand, all these various bands you're playing in the 70s, you're playing in bands with names like Double Image, Shattered Glass, all these bands. I got together with these guys, really good players. They're putting a new band together. Gigs were already booked, and we didn't have a band name. We get to the gig, we still don't have a band name. And one of the guys who was working at Lake Munmora Power Station by day and rocking out by night, gets to the gig, he's running late, he's beside himself, and then he just peels out of his overalls and he's got the shittiest... You couldn't call them white Y-Fronts because they were a few too many washes on from being white. They were kind of an horrible yellowy colour. All over too. I'm not just talking about a patchwork of yellow. They were, and I went, "Are you serious? They are the worst looking Y fronts I've ever seen. And the bass player goes, Y fronts, that's us. Let's go. We're the Y fronts. And the guy was like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome on stage, the Y fronts. And no pun intended, it stuck, the name. But when I put the band back together in Melbourne to do a charity thing, so I've moved into Ramsay Street. Kylie has demoed a version of
Locomotion.
Thank You. And is about to re-record it and release it through the late Michael Gudinski's Mushroom label. This is before she got involved with Stock Aitken and Waterman in the UK. How can you not smile at it? Do you know what I mean?
Craig, can we talk about, because one thing, so like Pete said, your career is crazy. We haven't even spoken about your stage career.
What light from yonder window breaks? I was wondering how long it was going to take you to get to some real art.
Well, because you had some really, really big roles on the West End. I've got a few questions, right? Because it was authentic as a rock star. You were a rock star as a kid. There was never a goal to be an actor. That was the backup plan. Went down that road, blew up, whatever. At what point did you start considering... doing what do we call it? Yeah, stage theatre, because that's scary shit.
Well, it's a really... I don't think I've ever been asked about at what point if we go right back to when I was a kid in high school, I was always, high schools put on an annual musical, don't they? I guess they still do.
Yeah, no, they do. My kids are in them.
Yep. And I know some of the... and I wasn't aware of this. I suppose it makes sense. Some of the, private schools where there's a bit more dough, they put on some insane productions, don't they? But anyway, we used to, like any high school in New South Wales, they used to put on an annual musical. It might be Oliver. Please, sir, can I have
my cousin Trent, shout out. My cousin was on Neighbours, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He played Oliver in a play. I just remember, Trevor.
Oh, really?
His name was Mickey Dalton.
Michael Dalton.
Michael Dalton, and he was...
he was in Rocky Horror with me at one point.
Was he?
Is that your cousin?
No, different. No, he played the character Mickey Dalton.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
On Neighbours, yeah.
Right.
Back in the early 90s, it would have been.
Just after my time. I was always happy to play guitar in the school musical band.
Okay.
Then in 1979, one of the music teachers, who was actually my jazz guitar teacher as well, wonderful, wonderful fella, Dennis Patterson was his name. He went, it's kind of cool for the kids to do Oliver or Little Abner or whatever the show is. Be great to actually create something for kids.
Pirates of Penzance.
Pirates of Penzance. So he wrote a thing called, he and an English teacher, American guy by the name of Mark Pascal, they wrote a musical called School, S''Cool. Remember, this is the late 70s. School. And I thought, I'd heard the music. I thought, this is gonna rock. And I'm going to wail, and I'm going to bring all my Ace Frehley and early Eddie Van Halen licks to this thing. It's going to be wild. And they said, no, we want you to play the lead role. Really? And it was a Jekyll Hyde sort of thing. It was decades ahead of its time. It dealt with schoolyard bullying. And there was a kid, his name was Nigel, and he was picked on relentlessly all the time. I was no stranger to a bit of bullying at school because I was super skinny as a kid. Some people know this, certainly the friends I went to school with. On a hot summer's day in the quadrangle, if you looked at my shadow, it looked like a dunny brush. I was just a stick with a mop of like Peter Frampton hair, Peter Frampton, Google that, youngsters. But the thing that really saved me at school was I could play any Akadaka song anyone wanted to hear, and the tough guys and girls thought that was pretty cool. So this story was about this kid, Nigel, who was relentlessly picked on. And he's in the science lab one day. And again, this is pre-internet and social media and the sort of bullying kids are subjected to today. He decides he's going to end it all. He's going to make a potion using stuff in the science lab. He's going to take himself out. He drops behind the chemistry bench in the classroom and re-emerges in a leather jacket. And so what he's done is it's like a Jekyll Hyde potion. It hasn't taken him out. It's turned him into everything he thinks he should be.
Yeah.
So the whole thing was a dual sort of Jekyll and Hyde type role. So much fun. And it garnered the interest of the late Mike Willesee, who's, Willesee was a TV legend in the 70s and 80s. He sent a reporter up, Paul Macon, to cover this show. And I got a lot of attention as the star of this musical, School. To this day, I think it still gets performed in high schools around the world. But anyway, beyond that experience, I never thought, even when I started in television, I had no desire to do musicals. None. I had no desire to do theatre. None. Wanted to get out and rock when I could. But in terms of my acting, by this point, I'd so grown in love with the process of shooting drama and what have you, that I wanted to move into film. And again, not being coming from a showbiz family, it made sense to me on paper that if you can build your popularity to such a point in this country, people are wanting to watch you. Doesn't it make sense to put me in your film? There's no money in Australian film, and if you get it at someone that people are going to buy a ticket to sit in the cinema and you are so wrong, Mr. McLachlan. Doesn't work like that. I learned in the most brutal way, the more popular I was on television,
The harder it became.
film people just hated you. I couldn't get an agent. When I say I couldn't get an agent, for want of a better word, a connected agent. Was
Get an agent, just couldn't get you any gigs.
not in film.
Yeah.
So, after Check 1 2 had done various little tours around the world and stuff, came back to Australia. I was doing something. Now let me just think about this. Timeline is everything, boys. I was just about to. That's right. I'd finally been cast in a movie. It was in New Zealand. And, was this before that? No, this is before that. I was back in Australia doing something on the telly, and I was approached to do Rocky Horror Show, or what was being branded as the new Rocky Horror Show in 1991 when I was approached. And they asked me to play Frankenfurter's Frankensteinian creation, the Rocky, the creation. And this just goes to show sort of an energized, no bullshit, say it like it is sort of approach. I was on a group call with my manager and this particular promoter who had the rights to the new Rocky Horror Show back then. And I just said, if you're ringing up to offer me a part in Rocky Horror Show, it's got to be Frankenfurter, otherwise you're talking to the wrong man. And they went, well, but, you're kind of fit looking. And I said, so what? Come on, Frank's the star of the show. That's the only one I'm interested in. And they went, well, we didn't think to ask you because, you kind of wholesome Henry, wholesome Ramsay Street image. And I'm like, no better reason, eh?
Yeah,
to
let's
get
break
into
it up a bit.
Yeah, get into a pair of stockings and some high heels. So, and I was familiar with the music of Rocky Horror because I'd played a lot of, Time Warp and all sorts of things in club and pub bands as a kid. So it was rock and roll enough for me to really throw myself into it. Beyond that, did I want to do any other musical? Nah. So when Grease came along in London.
Yeah, Danny
Zuko. Again, I said to my manager, no. And it was at this point that I'd just been cast in a movie that was being shot in New Zealand. My first starring role in a full-length feature film. It was down to Yeah, it was actually the audition process. It was down to me and Russell Crowe, and probably the only time in my career that I pipped Russell for the role. But of course, he hasn't done too badly for himself, has he? And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Toward the end of that film, unbeknownst to me, I had another song in the charts in England, like a solo thing that I'd done with a guy called Simon Hussey, who produced Daryl Braithwaite's The Edge album. Daryl's, I hate using the word comeback album, but Daryl's big comeback album, and the one after that that had horses on
horses,
it.
yep.
Wonderful cover of horses. Simon was just a lovely man and a very clever producer. We did a solo record, and I've suddenly got a new song in the top 40 in the UK. I go over, and this guy called Robert Stigwood wants to have a meeting. I'll pause there. After that picture in New Zealand, I was tentatively going to start shooting another picture in New Zealand a couple of months down the track. Mr. Stigwood, legendary entrepreneur and producer, produced the film Grease, produced Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, really?
He, as a young man, moved from South Australia to London, was tutored, mentored by Brian Epstein.
And he was an Aussie.
He was an Aussie.
Yeah.
He managed Eric Clapton, the Bee Gees, and on and on and on and on. He wants to have lunch. Robert was quite a character. I loved him very much. And he said, he enjoyed a drink, and if he was still with us, he wouldn't mind me telling you this. And all of our friends remember Robert very well. He did get sober toward the end of his life and was playing tennis and really having a cracking good time. But back in the day, he is a man who could tackle straight vodkas at 10 in the morning and still be able to pick up the phone and cut a deal with another producer in New York. You might have to put subtitles in. Another producer in New York. So he says, I want to have lunch with you. Have lunch. He's very charming, very funny. He goes, I'm going to produce a new version of the musical Grease. First time it's been seen on the West End stage since Richard Gere played Danny Zuko in the early 70s. And anyway, we get chatting and stuff, and my manager, we leave, and I go, nah, not interested in doing that. We get back to Australia, my manager, Robert's been on the phone. No, it's just, I want to go and I want to learn.
Be a rock star or something, yeah.
Well, and I just want to do more film. There's these other film opportunities come up. In the end, Robert said, look, I'm going to pay you very good coin to come over here. Just kick off the first 9 months for me, and you'll have the time of your life. I'll treat you like a king. And in the end, again, I just thought, well, what an education, what an experience. Robert's a legend. Okay, yeah, I'll just do the 9 months. The 9 months sold out before the first week of previews.
The whole fucking 9 months in,
whole months
in the West End.
What sort of crowd are cramming in to watch this, Craig?
2,500 at the Dominion Theatre in London. For those of you who know the Dominion Theatre, it's a great big theatre. I think it's probably the second biggest theatre in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, they would put a couple of extra fold-up ones up the back. You couldn't get another punter in with
rammed.
it. Yeah, I mean...
And when you're doing 2 shows a day, it's normally a couple of shows a day?
8 shows a week over 6 days, so you got 1 day off effectively.
Yep.
It's a heavy schedule.
Yeah, it was full on. And whether it was Mr. Stigwood or any producer I've ever worked for, I always make this pledge. As long as I can, under my own steam, take a breath. In other words, as long as I'm breathing, I will never miss a show. Well, after 12, 15, however many months of 8 shows a week, doing this supercharged version, Arlene Phillips, who I adore. Arlene, I hope you're watching this. You should, because they're really good, these guys. And so is Young Ace. Her choreography had to be better than anything that had been seen before. And I'm not a trained dancer.
You look like it in the videos I've seen.
Well, that's down to Arlene, and again, me being me, the rehearsal day would finish, and one of Arlene's assistants would stay back with me. We were talking about theatre earlier. I ended up doing a bunch of more shows in the UK, and then and some big musicals here in Australia, and then in 2000 and well, it would have been late 2013. A production of Rocky Horror was being staged in Australia. Now, for obvious reasons, I have enormous affection for the Rocky Horror Show. It was my first professional theatre gig, as we spoke about earlier, when it was branded the new Rocky Horror Show. I have, over the years, become very, very good friends. Vanessa and I are very good friends with the guy who created Rocky Horror Show, Richard O'Brien. And for fans who know the Rocky Horror Picture Show, will know that Riff Raff, the time warp guy, it's astounding. Time is fleeting. In the movie, that's played by Richard O'Brien. He's the guy who created Rocky Horror Show. So he's very good friends. When it was proposed that they were going to do a production in 2014, I just figured, quite honestly, fellas, I was shooting the Dr. Blake mysteries, which would take about 6 months of every year, and we'll talk about Dr. Blake in a minute. I'll just address this the elephant in the room. But I heard about the production going ahead. I wasn't aware of the producer, the director of it. He was an English guy. And just to be clear, I wanted to do it just before gravity really took a hold of my bum and while I was still physically in good enough shape to do it. Because think about what you got to wear. How do you do? I see you've met my faithful handyman. The cloak comes off and you're in a pair of skimpy knickers, stockings, and you don't want to go on playing that role live on stage looking like Hurricane Harry. Do you know what I mean? So I said to Nessa, I know life's busy with Blake and everything else, but I'd really love to just do this one last time while I'm fit and able. But be clear, I had to audition.
Bullshit.
I bullshit you not. So a lot of people think that you reach a point in your career, or at least I did, and this figures into the story of what happened to me next, that I'm this big, powerful guy who can just call the shots on what shows he does, who he employs, who he doesn't employ.
Which dressing rooms his.
Right? It's all bullshit. Yeah. I couldn't give a fuck about which dressing room I got as long as I got somewhere to sit, to put me socks on at the end of the night. I had to audition. So there's people half my age, and they're out of the various theatrical institutions, the learning institutions, the nighters, whatever. So twice their age in some cases, I had to walk into that room, introduce myself. I didn't have a uke with me on the day. Guy got on the piano and, how do you do? See you've met my... And again, talking about this, we were talking earlier about the universal law of attraction and this innate thing that I always had but didn't realise it. I jokingly said, right before I sang, strap yourselves in, friends, you ain't going to see anything like this today. Boom. I didn't even get home and the message was waiting. No one comes close, we'd love you to do the show. Fantastic. But I had to audition and I had to do scenes, and just like everyone else. The show was hugely successful. Every city it went to, seasons had to be extended. you can't extend indefinitely because you've got other things booked in, concerts and whatever. I don't mind telling you, and I won't get sued for saying it, the producers recouped their money in next to no time. This thing was huge. And me, I never miss a show. Never missed a performance. So the show, by the time we figured in all the extensions and whatever, we kicked off at the beginning of 2014, and I think we went through till August. So what is that? Almost 8 months or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was working with a bunch of new people. We had terrific fun. There was a friend of mine and Vanessa's who'd been cast in the role, someone I'd already worked with, someone Vanessa had worked with. It was all good. You know, life in the theatre is not like working at the reception counter of the Commonwealth Bank. You know, a culture exists in the theatre. It's a bit like running away to the circus. So people are naughty. You know, someone will smack you on the bum right as you're walking on stage to try and crack you up. All that stuff happens. Some people try to deny that any such culture existed. And of course, they were summarily dismantled in a court of law because there are too many witnesses to say this was de rigueur, this happened. It's also very tricky, isn't it, when prosecution witnesses, and for those of you who don't know, they're people coming in to testify.
To say they saw you did it, yeah.
They're asked the question, what was life like backstage? Oh, it was wild. We'd sit on each other, lay on each other, lounge on each other, tweak people's nipples, and on. And I just sat there and went, thank you. This knucklehead doesn't even realise that in telling the truth, he's completely laying out honestly what life was like there. So to cut to the chase, can you imagine for someone like me who was always about the vibe, everyone having a good time?
Mate, Craig, we saw it when you walked in this fucking door, dude.
You know, that's just who I am. And inclusive, before inclusive was a fashionable word thrown around social media, that was me. I used to have directors come up to me on certain projects and say, the energy you give to the extra at the end of the street, it's not your job to take him a coffee. And the poor bugger's been standing there in the freezing cold for hours. You fuckers aren't getting him a coffee. I had a couple of minutes up my sleeve. I thought I'd give him a coffee. Now, there's a Logie vote next year, isn't there? You know, you crack a gag. Actresses who... It's a funny thing being an actor. I never experienced it, but there's a lot of insecurity. People who are saying, I can't do this today, I can't do this today. And I'd be like, yes, you can. You're here because you can, and you're here because you're brilliant. And I love doing this shit with you. Come here. You give them a big hug and say, not only have you got this, we're going to do this in one take. Boom, you do it. So inclusive was just part of who I was before I even knew the word existed. So when a friend who, again, and I'm not saying this with any bitterness or hatred, whatever happens in your life, friends, you've got to get rid of the hate. You may never understand why someone's done something to you. You may never understand if you lose someone, a parent or a friend or whatever. Don't hate the doctor who tried their best. You got to get rid of the hate. I don't hate anyone through the ordeal I've been through.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, but you've got to do it or it'll give you cancer. It'll kill you. I'll never understand why. Well, I have theories, but I won't get into that today. But when a friend who, right up to the time of telling journalists that you're a bully and a rat bag, is sending you, and my beautiful partner Vanessa, folks, who you haven't seen today, but she's sitting here and she is lovely. She still has on her phone, love you guys. Are we still going to hook up next week? Love you, love you, love you. Craig and I are so funny on the TV together. This is someone who sent me a photo of herself sitting on a dunny with her knickers around her knees a month or so before she went to the press and said, I'm a pervert. Now, just keep this in context. This was someone that we never had any inkling had an issue with, me or Vanessa for that matter. Loving text messages, sometimes quite caring text messages. To say the shock it was overwhelming, well, that would be the understatement of the century. If I'd been an asshole, you'd kind of figure, yeah, it's only
you got me.
It's about time. If you regularly rob 7-Elevens, the chances are eventually you're going to get caught. That's not me. But the story's much bigger than me. It was so easy for my friend, or someone who expertly led me to believe she was a friend. It was so easy for her to demolish not just my life, my family, and whatever. She just picked on the wrong family.
And your legacy, man.
And the legacy. But you know what? That's something they actually can't take away.
Yeah, and they can't. And I think,
They actually can't. We're here talking about Neighbours. We're talking about Top of the Pops. They never experienced that and never will.
Yeah.
And I don't say that with any nastiness. They never will. We're talking about, and I crack jokes about it all the time, Logies and gold records. No. But think about this. So many of them put their hand up, even auditioning to come back to the show in 2017-18, knowing I was doing it. I couldn't have been that monstrous.
Yeah.
And let me just say this, and can I just say, there is a speech available online. We'll give you the details.
I've seen it. Are you talking about Vanessa?
Yeah.
I've seen it. Yeah,
Right.
we'll share it.
So share that, and I urge all our friends to watch it because it's a much bigger story than just what happened to Craig. It's happening to families, good families, all over this country. Decisions are being made, determined on how many thumbs up some idiot gets on social media. And I'm not just talking about people alleging certain things. I'm talking about people in the judiciary, people presiding over cases who are saying and making what they deem to be the right statement based on what's trending on social media. You think that's shocking? I can prove it. And you talk to learned legal professionals, and they're concerned about the same thing. People presiding over cases saying things they have no fucking right legally based on evidence to say. So I urge you to watch Vanessa's
So it
speech.
convolutes the conversation. Is that what you mean, Craig? Like it just really just muddies the fucking waters and no one really knows what's true and what's not.
Listen, in my case, you're found not guilty. There's a reason for that. That's not because I'm powerful and I
it's
could
'cause you
pay
weren't
off,
guilty,
right? It's not because I have influence over right? When you've got, I'll give you an example. Someone comes in and says, for argument's sake, "Oh, I saw him. I saw him grab her and throw her across the stage, right? And what did you see exactly? Well, he just grabbed her by the shoulders and he just threw her. Okay, thank you very much. Next witness. You saw the same thing? Yes, I did. What did you see? Well, he pinched her face and kind of levitated her into the air and then just dropped her. That's your testimony? Yes. Next witness. You saw it? Yeah, I saw it. What did you see? He just got her in the headlock. Right. I point out, though, I've noticed in the nightly show report, you weren't even on stage that night. Think about what the fuck is going on here.
Why? What was
Yeah, I saw it. What did you see? Well, he just sort of picked her up by the ears and flung her around the stage. Were you on stage that night? No. Are you ever on stage? No. What do you do? I work behind the sound desk backstage. Can you actually see the stage? No. We'll take a quick recess. So what I'm getting at is there's a reason you're found innocent. The criminal court is not like a lucky dip with a civil case, where if they just get enough guys to say, the little fish guys are awful, they don't need any evidence. They just need to get more people to say
enough
that
people
you
to
guys
agree?
are awful.
Yeah.
Well, and the jury goes, I guess they must be awful, right? Criminal law, it's evidence. Suddenly there's 1,000 people that haven't been spoken to or interviewed by the cops. Now, there's a reason Victoria Police paid my costs.
Yeah.
Nothing says you got it fucking
$500,000,
wrong.
yeah?
More.
Was it more? Yeah.
More than that. So it was horrendous. It was horrible. Imagine, and then I'll move on. I just want the people at home who might be sitting on the fence. Again, I urge you to look at Vanessa's thing. But a 30-plus year career, you don't, and I'd never not worked. Think about that. From 1986 to January the 8th, 2018, I'd never not worked. Not because I'm God's gift to the world of performance and acting. I was a good guy to have around. End of story. I brought a lot of positivity, a lot of energy, a lot of love, and mine and Vanessa's office are full of really delightful letters from producers and actors. So how do you reconcile it suddenly for a week or a couple of weeks in Melbourne in 2014, I suddenly became this bullying monster? What's alarming is, and this is the final example I'll give, imagine being asked in court, have you ever said, or did you ever say to anyone that my client, Mr. McLachlan, would routinely pull down a female colleague's pants, a friend of yours, while performing on stage, and on at least one occasion managed to get her costume right off and kiss her on the vagina? Have you ever said that to anyone? No. You're quite sure about that? Yes. You're quite sure? Yes. Click on the device, and what do you hear? And he would, always. Now, I would love to share the actual. The horrible thing about getting prepared for a case is I have to listen to all this shit, and so does my beautiful partner, Vanessa. People I thought were my friends.
She's a gangster, Vanessa.
She's a gangster.
No, she is, man. That video, and we'll link to that video down below.
So you can imagine. The barrister says, do you recognise that voice? Darting eyes, yes. That's you, isn't it? Yes. What do you have to say about that? I didn't know I was being recorded. Think about that. You can serve up the most ruinous lie that will instantly destroy not just the target of your... And you can speculate whether it's jealousy, whatever that is. And again, I've had to listen to terrifying things in that regard that I can't share with you because of legalities. But think about the person I'm alleged to have done it to is asked the question, did my client ever do this thing to you? No. Anything like that? No. So you would agree that's a lie? Yes. That's how easy it is to ruin someone's life.
Yeah.
So the good news is Vanessa courageously spoke about this recently. You can check that out, as we've said. And at the end of the day, you can't keep a good man down.
Yeah, and the fucking cream always rises, Craig.
And you can't keep a good gal down.
No, man, true. Cream rises, the truth comes out. It's just the way the world fucking works. The shit thing is that you got dragged through the mud, but you've had a good run. So I feel like, it's probably the earth bloody balancing it out. You know what I mean? You did get Henry Ramsey.
Well,
you know what I mean?
there would have been other ways I would have preferred to have had things balanced out. Because it's tough at the hands of people you thought were friends.
Can I ask, Craig, did you see it coming though? Like, because it felt like for me anyway, like when it sort of just one day just appeared, but did you hear rumblings that people were saying things about you and then it sort of turned into something? Or just one day you wake up and this friend is,
Do you know, if you remember the frenzy of the time, and I'm not going to give the former journalist, if that's what she was, I'm not going to give her any more airtime. You know who I'm talking about. Came out and said, I've got a hit list of 60 celebrities. Now I can remember thinking, fuck.
That's a few.
Oh, gee, I wonder who's on that. But that's going to be bullshit, surely. Never for a second did I think that I'd be on any kind of hit list other than the list of guys who goes and carries shit for the crew or gets coffee.
Looks after the boys, yeah.
It never occurred to me. Even after the Weinstein shit erupted and all that stuff, never occurred to me. And then one day I get a phone call from someone, a crew member who's known my personality and behaviour for years, since I was a kid starting out on telly. And he rang up and he said, Craig, I'm just letting you know, this is a quote, they're going to do a Don Burke on you at the ABC. Just heads up, right? And even then I went, no, you got that wrong. We had no idea. No idea. And we didn't know who the people were.
Where it was coming from or anything, Craig.
But, and for us, it wasn't just a case of getting in the criminal court and fighting our case. There was COVID in the middle of it. And, you know, it was just what we thought would take X amount of time took X amount of time. So, but look, an acquittal is an acquittal.
But they all cover it. They all cover it when they say you go into court and then you get found not guilty. And where's all the coverage there? You know what I mean? That's the annoying thing that I find that, you know, the media jumps on and everyone's selling the same story when it's, you know, the bad thing. Craig's been busted doing this. Yeah. But when Craig's been found innocent, blatantly innocent.
That's boring, isn't it?
Yeah, no
What are the Kardashians doing? Have any of them got another tattoo? Is there some...
But you know what, Craig? Yeah. Congratulations to you, dude, because and Vanessa, because it's true. The truth comes out. The cream's always going to rise, and you are who you are. You said it yourself. You can't hide that shit, man. If you're rubbing people up and you're doing, you know, dodgy shit on the side, you might get it. You can rob a couple of 7-Elevens maybe, but eventually
you're going to get done.
Of course,
and
man.
You know,
look at P. Diddy. Like P. Diddy, he's a perfect example. When you did it, you did it. You know what I mean?
There are all these. Yeah, look, the other thing is too that I never thought for a second that when my friend or friends on that show, you know, and this stuff comes out in the criminal matter, again, there's a reason a person's found not guilty. When they were goosing me or giving me wedgies or, you know, daxing me or whatever the prank was.
The horseplay?
I didn't think for 1 minute, oh, they're making a move on. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I never thought for a second it was anything more than them goofing. I never behaved in a fashion that was disproportionate to whatever was going on around me. Having said that, I didn't goose anyone. It's just grabbing someone's sweaty dax that had been performing all night. But anyway, whatever people did to me...
you haven't given someone a wedgie, you haven't lived. I mean, like, what's the big deal?
I remember copping a brutal one from a guy called Leno when I was 12 years old, and we'd just had a game of footy in the playground, and we're walking back to the D block where our classrooms were. Leno come behind me and he goes, "Dunny Brush, good game, son," and
so that was your nickname, Dunny Brush.
And I went, I am never going to do that to anyone. But anyway, look, guys, thanks for giving me the opportunity to sort of touch on that again, if we can use the word touch. But the good news is you get through it. And I wouldn't have, without the support of Vanessa, who was on that tour, incidentally, she knew these personalities, which is why she was so gung-ho in court. She was stronger in court than I was on occasion because she was there. Without her, I wouldn't be here. But the thing is, you know what? And the support of the Australian people, the folks out in the street, who have come up and just said the most incredibly encouraging things to Vanessa and I, not just now that we're kind of through it all, but during the I mean, it was like just being in an emotional, nightmarish. You remember the movie Twister?
Yeah.
And the cows are flying around their heads and the cars and shit. It is like that. So to all those people, and I kid you not, the thousands of people who wrote to us, old school, not just email, sharing their stories and their support.
One thing, Craig, and then we'll leave it behind. But have you been able to find any peace or any figure out in your mind? Because I would imagine in my mind, if this happened to me, the loop in my brain would be, why? Why me? What did I do? Like as you said yourself, we've seen it. You're a happy-go-lucky. You light up the room. You know, you treat everyone with Why? Like, have you has that is that looping in your head, or have you had to just come to peace with you're never going to know and you just got to move on?
It's a really, really good question, and of course, you spend the bulk of your time trying to
Unpack it, yeah.
work out why.
The root of it.
And I have theories just based on a lifetime in show business. That's all I'll say on that. But eventually, I just had to let it go and to know that the victory in the criminal court, acquittals are important, friends. It's not like buying a fishing license. They're really important. They're more important than so-called public interest sensational headlines. And we need to fucking grasp that concept. An acquittal is more important than the salacious sensational headline that saw a good family guy. Because I always talk about it's not just me.
Yeah.
It's family, it's friends. And we don't place, the people do, but media, whatever, showbiz, no one puts any stock in just how hugely important an acquittal is. And we fucking need to.
Agree.
Honestly, we need to. But beyond that, as in terms of why, when the cameras are off one day over a beer, I'll give you my theories, and it's based on experience of show business and unfortunately having to go through hours of terrifying audio tapes and what have you. But it's happened. There's nothing I can do about it. Vanessa and I are more in love today than we were even when we met.
Is that right? You said, because you did say earlier that, you know, for so many years you worked, and then that fateful day when it sort of all fell, you know, you got that news that you were being attacked or whatever. So the assumption was that you stopped working for those 3 years. You went under the rock and you just focused on clearing your name?
Well, look, it was such a tsunami of sensation. You know, I was contracted, if not contracted, heads of agreement. My immediate life was very busy. I had to finish the 2018 Rocky Tour, deliver 4 Dr. Blake movies. There was a television series being written by another production company for me. I mean, it was. You talk about dreams coming true. I'd reached a point in my career, and now as a more mature guy, you know, I wasn't just the, you know, cheeky young spunky Henry anymore, if I can use the word spunky. Now I was being taken seriously for the Dr. Blake stuff, and all of this stuff was coming in overnight.
And Dr. Blake was a phenomenon as well.
Dr. Blake, you wouldn't think, would you, that an Australian drama on a Friday night up against all the sports, the
ABC?
footy codes, on the ABC as well, you wouldn't think that it would smash everything. All the footy codes.
Million. It was 1.5, 1.6.
And that was before they factored in all of the, you know, you can do your catch-up views.
Yeah.
So this thing just creamed it from the get-go. Season 1 went into season 2, 3, 4, I think 5, and then we were axed at a time where we were rating far and above everything else. That's another story for another day. But one of our commercial networks spoke to me about another project, and I, again, you know, this is that belief thing. I just said, yeah, it's not a bad idea what you're proposing, but wouldn't you like to just go with a hit, something you know is a hit? And Blake's up for grabs. And we ended up doing a deal for Blake. So everything evaporated overnight. Everything. Now, here's something, and I'll speak to our friends watching. You've always got to look for the positives in anything and everything. And even in the nightmare that Nessie and I and our families have endured. I mean, we're out the other end now, but you think about 6 years of the lessons that come along. Big lesson for me is to all of our friends tuned in who have experienced unemployment. I hear. I never really understood it because I'd never experienced it. So if we just talk a second about mental health, I've now met people who have not coped with suddenly finding they're unemployed. And it might be 6 weeks turns into 6 months. They've got a mortgage. They've got this. Well, for me, it's been 6 years. So I have an appreciation for people who do it tough in that regard when it comes to work. That opens up a whole area of mental health stuff that it's not that I never really paid any attention to it. One thing is, if I'm being absolutely honest, I never understood depression or anxiety. Again, innately, for whatever reason, whether you believe in the good Lord above or if you're a fan of Darwin's, I was just born with a very optimistic, happy disposition. So I never really understood when people would say, "Oh, I'm so depressed. I think I can," and now I do. And I'm at a point in my life where I can talk to people about that. I can share some of my experience and share things I've learned. I went and did some time at Neighbours Rival, home and away.
You did too,
back
yeah.
in the day. And that was a great time. But it really, my experience on that show was weighed down by the legal battles that were going on behind the scenes all the time. And ultimately, good sense prevailed and said, we can't keep the boy here under these circumstances. This is not the deal he signed. And there was a particular fella, I won't name him, but there was a particular fella who said,
This is bullshit.
Cut him loose. Let him plug in with his band and go and tour in Europe and whatever. But yeah, mate, Neighbours Henry, he's so dear to my heart. That period of the show, I'm still in touch with Guy Pearce.
I was going to say that. Do you guys keep in touch? Because you said before earlier when you were saying no one else would experience what you guys had experienced. There's only the 3 or 4 of you that really lived that. You guys, that's a shared thing that you got. Do you keep in contact?
Guy and I were sharing mad text messages. He's on the other side of the planet at the moment, just days ago. But, it's interesting when over the years, when they've had sort of, the odd documentary looking at Neighbours and I've briefly met some of the folks who were in the show after that chaotic sort of mid-late 80s period. Or I meet journalists who have reported on Neighbours toward the end of its... I mean, I know there's a rebooted version of it now, isn't there? I haven't seen it, but this new one. But again, I would always say with respect, and I hope that everyone's experience, for those people who played ongoing major roles, I hope they all had a cracking good time. I don't know if they had as good a time as we did, because experiencing the absolute peak of that roller coaster, I was there as the chink, 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 chink. The car was almost at the top, and then the view was just extraordinary, and then strap yourself, woo, and off we went. That's something that me, Guy, Vivian Gray, the cast of that period of the show.
Joey Mangles? What was his name? Little?
Mark Little.
Mark Little, yeah. Joey Mangles?
I know Mark stayed with the show beyond that 80s period.
And then he did a talk show, I think, from memory, in the UK. He ended up doing a morning show or something.
Yeah. There was a show called The Big Breakfast.
That's right, The Big Breakfast, yeah.
Chris Evans was the original host along with, I can't remember the other gal's name, but Paulie Yates had a segment on that show as well. And eventually Mark went in and took the bloke's chair on that. But, again, just getting back to that mid to late 80s, once it was rebooted on Channel 10, that period of the show, it was just something else.
It was a moment in time, Craig, that can never be replicated for sure. And it's, the 80s, and there's going to be plenty of people, our audience spans that age group as well. So there's going to be plenty out there that are resonating, that saw what we saw, and or from the outside saw what you saw. Like you said, you ended up on the cover of a magazine, and that magazine, the day that magazine came out, it just went bang. That was the power of the magazine back in the day, which people, I guess the younger generation are going to find it hard to connect with, but that was the internet, right? That's where the information was, that's where the gossip was, and that's where the attention was.
Yeah, those magazines, certainly as far as television was concerned, and you'll still see them on the racks at the supermarkets and what have you. TV Week was the thing. But and again, nothing quite prepares you for any kind of fan mania, for want of a better description. I'd have to ask Vanessa. She's been with me a long time. I think I always handled it pretty well. I always had the notion, or held on to the notion, that I wouldn't be here without them. If Henry hadn't proved so popular, that initial 6-week contract,
It's all over.
I always felt grateful to, again, it was about that thing about the people, with Henry, hoping I could hit upon something that resonated with folks, that they really, really took Henry to their hearts and laughed at him. And, he was unlucky in love. He was... The Queen Mum came up to me in London, just talk about the impact of Henry. The Queen Mum comes up to me at a particular event where I was lucky enough to meet her, and she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she came up and she said, "Mr. McLachlan, I'm thoroughly thrilled to meet you this evening." And I said, "Mum, the honour is all mine. Believe me, this is a dream come true." And she, "Really?" I said, yes. And all my family back in Australia know that you and I are going to be chatting this evening. They're so excited. "Oh, I'm so thrilled. Could I ask you a question?" I said, "Anything." "When Henry was making those plaster cast gnomes, and he put them on Madge's carpet to dry them out, was there not a single solitary moment in his thinking where he considered the fact that wet plaster would be the natural enemy, surely, of any carpet, whether it was 100% woolen or synthetic fibre? It was bound to stick." And I'm like, well, the thing about Henry, Mum, and I say this with a lot of love, he's not the sharpest chisel in the carpenter's kit. "Oh, quite. He isn't, isn't he? But we do love him." And that brilliantly summed up Henry, and that's come from the Queen Mum. Not the sharpest chisel in the carpenter's
You know, it's
kit.
bizarre that she's watching Neighbours. Wonder if she was on the afternoon or the second run of the evening.
From my chats with her, I'd say she was watching both in case she missed something in the,
This has been mad.
Oh, Craig, mate, well done, and congratulations on an amazing career, and well done with your most recent.
And thank you for everything,
achievement.
man. Yeah.
Oh, listen,
And thanks for coming by, and thanks for your excitement, of life. And I think a lot of lessons here, glass half full, and go ham into everything. And I think your longevity doesn't sound like you're ever the best at things when you started, but because you were such a good guy and people loved having you around, authentic people wanted to have you around, but then they taught you and they dragged you through and they put the time into you because you were that good guy. And people only do that people only give their time when they see something and they feel something for somebody. So anyway, some good lessons there for people coming through to be that person that you want to have around.
Absolutely.
And we're excited to have you back. Once these 2025 comes around and you're rolling out,
Take us out, Craig.
You know, I wouldn't go
check
anywhere
1, 2, let's go.
two. Check 1, 2.
Check
Hey?
1, 2.
Sing while I play. Are you ready for this? The tuning's a bit dodgy, but we have been giving it a bit of a bash today, Ace. Ace, I can see you run this place. Ace, I love to see that smile on your face. As long as the wind's not blowing, you and me will be all right. Because if we start sneezing, then everything's just go out of sight. Oh, Ace, I just love that look on your face. Ace, I can see you run this place. Ace, I could just sit with you here till day's end. Ace, you're my new best friend. How about that? Ya-da-di-da-da. Woo! Good on you, fellas. Good on you, Ace.
Amazing. Please, guys, like, share, subscribe. Anyone that's going to get value out of that?
Yeah.
Yes!
See you at the top.
See you at the top.
See you at the
See you
top.
at the top. Ace!
People want to be part of a winning team.
People can find a better version of themselves if they choose.
You just need to go start some shit.
Action is all that matters.
Be a man of your word.
I think I look back now and I'm like, whoa, that took some guts.
Be kind, be kind, be kind.
See you at the top.